when their prefrontal cortex is online, they're thoughtful, they're intelligent, they're empathetic and compassionate, they have great ideas, they can plan, their judgment is great. And we see that in our kids and we're like, this is fantastic, it's amazing. And then hours later or minutes later, boom, what just happened? They're just like a puddle of emotion and impulsivity, and or they did that bonehead decision. Like what were you thinking moment? And we'll tell ourselves or tell them, you're so much smarter than this. But it's not about being smart. It's not about being smart. It's about their brain being still developing.
Welcome to the Fresh Start Family Show. I'm your host, Wendy Snyder, powerful parenting educator and family life coach. And together we are going on a journey to help you expand your heart, learn new tools, and strengthen your family so you can build the family legacy of your dreams. I'm a mama too turned child and family advocate who went from being extremely stressed out back when my strong-willed little girl was a toddler to now thriving as a parent and having the honor to support thousands of families each year who choose to go from frazzled and impatient to peaceful and empowered. Each week, we will dive in with experts, thought leaders, authors, and advocates with insights to help you thrive in your parenting walk, as well as in your marriage and even in your career and faith walk too. Together, sometimes alone, sometimes with my better half and co-host Terry, we'll explore the triumphs and trials we all face as parents and share practical tools to fill our hearts, minds, and souls with inspiration. Take a deep breath and get ready to be poured into with some fresh start inspiration. Let's do this. Hello, parents, and welcome back. I'm so happy that you are here. Summer has officially arrived, and I know so many of you are a little nervous when the summer months arrive, but I know that you are dreaming of a season filled with peace and connection and maybe even some fun with your kids instead of stress, conflict, or constant power struggles. And that is why I am excited to welcome today's guest. His name is Yshai Boussi. He is a family therapist who's been helping teens, young adults, and parents for over 20 years. He is the author of Staying Connected with Your Teen, Polyvagal Parenting Strategies to Reduce Reactivity, Set Limits, and Build Authentic Connection. And today he came on the show to help us understand what's really going on in the teen brain. We're going to break down what he likes to call the teen brain cocktail, that mix of big dopamine spikes and impulsivity that can leave parents feeling overwhelmed and teens feeling misunderstood. So this episode is for you if you have a teen now, or if you will have teens one day, because no matter where you are in your parenting journey at this point, trust me, this wisdom will help you build a foundation for connection, courage, and compassion. So if you want this summer to be one of understanding, firm kindness, and deeper connection with your kids, you are in the right place. So let's dive in and learn together how to see our teens with fresh eyes and guide them with love. Help me welcome Yshai to the show. Well, hello, families, and welcome back. We're so happy to have you here today. And Terry and I are thrilled to be speaking with Yshai Boussi. Welcome to the show, Yshai.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, today, families, we are going to be talking about the teen brain cocktail, Dopamine and Impulsivity Explained. And I have been so excited for this interview for a while, Yshai. I know we had to reschedule a few times because I know we're both doing great work in the world and busy schedules. So thank you for being patient and having flexibility with us. But we are excited to be here today because we have two teenagers. We are officially teenage land, and you are the pro when it comes to understanding their brains. And Terry and I definitely have been looking at each other after I feel like being in like a really good rhythm for years. And now we're kind of like, ooh, we're in a surge here. Like our little easygoing guy, he's definitely in a power surge. We can feel it. We're like, wow, like he's really pushing back on some stuff. And of course, like every family across the world.
He's a larger human being now too. So I look at him a little differently too, but yeah.
He's almost as tall as Terry. He's now wearing Terry's clothes. Is his foot as big as your foot now or no?
Basically, yeah. He wears the same size shoe. He's almost as tall as me. And the clothes too, some of them he hasn't even asked. He just comes down and I'm like, oh, so we're You're just taking that. I mean, in some ways, I'm flattered. It's like Wendy's like, if he's wearing your clothes, that means you're still pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, but he didn't ask, and he just took those. Like, so it's gone now. But yeah,
Uh, uh,
And then our
um,
strong-willed girl has always been in a power surge stage of life. And she's actually, I feel like she's coming off the like rainbow hump a little bit and becoming a little bit more, a lot more mature. And,
yeah.
but anyways, we are full teen land. And I have been intrigued with your work for a long time to understand really how the teen brain works. And I know we have so many students who obviously are in that second decade of life with their kids. And so we're excited to have this conversation today. But will you start us off by just telling us a little bit more about your story and your practice up in Portland and what you are passionate about and how you got to this point?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that is just so real. I'm also the parent. I have a 16-year-old daughter. She just turned 16, and a 12-year-old son. And he's getting there as well, in terms of size and just that shift. It really is a new era, different playbook from the little kid version. So looking forward to
Yeah.
talking about that. How did I get into this? I get, I didn't grow up thinking I would do this kind of work. So as a family therapist, I work primarily with teens, young adults, parents, and families. And I also do workshops and a lot of different things with parents, a lot of work with parents and with young folks. And I've been doing it for a long time. I was actually a business major at college and
Mm.
thought I would go that route. And then I volunteered as a mentor in my early 20s with an at-risk youth program with 13-year-olds. And it was a year-long commitment. It was really involved, really intensive. And I just really loved it. And I seemed to connect well with the youth. It was rewarding. It felt meaningful, important. And so then I kind of did more and more work with youth. And I was just drawn to that. It's kind of, you're kind of a weirdo if you really like teenagers. And I was one of those weirdos. I just
That's
love them.
awesome.
They're really interesting and hard and complicated, but just
Yeah.
lovable and fun. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey. And then I decided I want to be a therapist and do some of that work with teenagers. This was maybe 25 years ago now. It's been a long time. Um, this was all before I had kids. And I thought I had it all figured out. I was like the best parent. I knew everything about parenting until I had kids. You know how that
Yeah.
goes, right? And then you have them, you're like, whoa, this is real. This is way harder
Yeah.
than I could have ever imagined. And so my empathy for parenting grew so much just having kids and then doing family therapy. I was trained as a family therapist. And as you guys know, you just listen to parent after parent after parent, their stories. You can't help but have empathy and see like this is hard. And even when we make mistakes, and we all do, the longer you've done this, if you're an involved parent, you're going to have messed up. You're going to have moments that you
Yeah.
regret. So there's that understanding that this is just really hard, and that young people don't want us bashing their parents. Parents don't want to feel judged and criticized. Like, we need to help bridge that gap. And so that's been really intriguing, and something I've been really passionate in my work is not picking a side, but actually connecting with young people and connecting with parents. Um, I'm on everyone's side because that's what everyone ultimately wants. And sometimes we can get caught up in a binary of sides. Like, I just,
Yeah.
parents, man, why are kids acting this way? Or kids, why are your parents doing this to you? And so I find that important, meaningful, but also really interesting. So that's kind of what brings me to this, and the book I wrote, Staying Connected with Your Teen, because I'm really grounded in this, and this helps me too, this philosophy that at the end of the day, connection is what is going to help build resilience for our kids. There's a lot of other things to think about and deal with, but ultimately, them feeling connected to us, even when they're older, they still need us. They still need to
Yeah.
have that relationship that's meaningful. There's no better way to inoculate them from all the fears we have: drugs and alcohol, mental health issues,
Right.
healthy social and peer relationships. When they feel a solid connection with their parents, they're much more likely to make better decisions and have better judgment, because we can't protect them from every single risk factor in the world. It's just they're going to be exposed to all the things. So how do we kind of help support them and decrease the risk of them getting caught up in it? There's no guarantees, but by being connected with our kids, that's the best way to support them long term.
Amen. It really
I
is.
love that.
Yep. And the subtitle of your book is called Polyvagal Parenting Strategies to Reduce Reactivity, Set Limits, and Build Authentic Connection. Will you speak to us a little bit more about polyvagal parenting strategies before we kick off our conversation around the teen brain cocktail?
Yeah. Thanks for asking, because that word is like, what? Wait, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It's not the most accessible word, but it's so important. The polyvagal theory, it's actually very widespread right now. It's very popular. Virtually all therapists understand what polyvagal and use it in their work. So it's a very evidence-based and not a controversial topic. But basically, what it is, it's a model that understands that teaches us that it's actually our nervous system that responds to our environment first, not our logic and our thinking. And so we have three states in our nervous system. We're either in a shutdown state, which is more immobilized, low energy, maybe depressed, maybe just kind of meh. Or we also have a sympathetic system, which is we often talk about as fight or flight. It's mobilized, it's anxiety, it's fidgetiness, it's intensity. It's more of an energetic kind of state. And then our highest, most evolved state is when we experience regulation. When we're grounded, we can connect, receive connection, we can think, learn. So those three states, it's connected in our nervous system, our body, and it's our first responder to the world. When we get to know our kids' nervous system, some of us have kids that are a little more in a shutdown kind of state or a little more activated anxiety kind of state. And some of them can more easily get regulated. Some kids have a harder time getting regulated. We're the same way. We can be regulated and then slip into more of an activated state, right? Or sometimes we're just so withdrawn because we're shut down because we're just spent, right? And so understanding our kids' nervous system and everything in our environment, we're constantly on the lookout for cues of safety or cues of danger. And so everything from our tone of voice, our body language, how we communicate, what we communicate, it's not just our words. And our culture typically overemphasizes words, or what's often thought of as top-down processing, language, information. And sometimes as parents, we get stuck. We're like talking, giving them all this information, which is good information generally, but they can't hear any of it because they're activated, because their nervous system is in more of a protective state. And so understanding that, so I talk about it in a very simple, easy to understand way, because this stuff I'm really trying to get this information out there to everybody, because it's helped me personally with my own kids, this way of thinking about the nervous system, not just their brain, their logic. And it's also helps me with my clients. So that's what the polyvagal theory is. And then it can help us deal with, when we understand that, then it's easier to learn how to lower reactivity and connect with them, because our kids can't connect with us when they're activated or they're shut down. So how do we help them get them to a more regulated state? And then we can apply the lessons and information.
It's so awesome. Yeah, it's so in line with the direction we've gone at Fresh Start Family, because just about probably a year and a half ago, we started learning more and more about nervous system regulation. And now we realize that it is the first thing we want to always be teaching our parents, not just a little something. So we're knee deep in 4 months of nervous system regulation and healing workshops within our membership program called the Fresh Start Experience. But that's just beautiful. And the reason why you call it polyvagal parenting strategies, does it have to do with the polyvagal nerve, or is that just a general study, broader term of anything regarding the nervous system?
It's part of the autonomic nervous system, but it is
Right.
the vagus nerve. A lot of people know about that, and that is part of the autonomic nervous system. And that's what we're trying to activate, to trigger. That is sort of our brake system. It slows us down. And there's a lot of things out there about how
Cool.
to stimulate the vagus nerve in the service of helping us get calm. And so that's kind of what a lot of people are kind of thinking about now more than ever, which I think is fantastic. It's great to hear you guys are doing that. And that's what I'm kind of preaching more and more too. Like I said, it's really helpful, because when we can see, okay, my kid's is dysregulated, so how do I help them get regulated? It's going to become by staying regulated myself. We underestimate the power of our own state to impact our kids. We get so caught up in theories or ideas, or maybe even consequences or carrots and sticks and all these things. And then, but if we're dysregulated, our kids literally can't get regulated.
Yes. I used to always think I would do a lot of polls with our people, whether it was on Instagram or email, and I mean, thousands and thousands of people we've asked, and we've had thousands of people through our programs, and we always thought their number one biggest challenge in parenting is usually the strong-willed kid, the kid that pushes back the most, right? We all know that those beautiful children are usually the future leaders of the world, are the highest degree of difficulty, right? And so we always thought for years, like that was our clients, our students' biggest pain point. And recently, I always joke that I think AI is going to kill our world. Like, eventually in 100 years, it'll make the planet implode. But for right now, I kind of love it. And so I put 800, we have thousands of pages of questions that we've compiled over the years from our paid private students. But we put one 800-page document into ChatGPT and we said, hey, can you just tell us, like, what is our students' biggest pain point? And it came back as emotional reactivity and feeling hijacked in those moments of challenge. And we as a team just thought it was so interesting because we've always kind of thought that our clients really were looking to the kids as like, if these kids could just be easier and not push back as much and not be so difficult, and like, well, how can I just get them to cooperate more and listen and not be so challenging? And really, we realize that our clients are just so spot on. They know that it is actually, if they can self-regulate first more easily and not feel so hijacked by these situations where their nervous system just goes into panic mode, which, it just makes so much sense why, especially looking at the way many of our students were raised as children. But it was just so cool to see that and to have that confirmed and to know that this conversation is so important because parents are smart and they get it. Like when you tell them, 99% of what kids learn is caught versus taught. Like, yeah, there's a little shame that a lot of parents have to work on shedding to get to that. But
Right.
many of our students, they're ready. They're like, okay, that makes sense to me, but how? How the heck do I do this? Because I'm always triggered, so good.
That's great. That's a really good direction. Yeah, to focus on
Yeah.
it, getting rid of that
Okay.
stigma.
Well, Teen Brain Cocktail, Dopamine and Impulsivity Explained. So, Yshai, will you talk to us about how adolescents release more dopamine than we do, why their baseline is lower than ours? So, the spike of dopamine they get is often intense. Talk to us about that and why it's important for us to understand that about our teens.
Sure. Yeah, so I think people know by now because there's a lot of talking about dopamine. It's the neurotransmitter in our brain that is in the reward system center of our brain, and it is released in anticipation or through the experience of pleasure. Experiencing pleasure or even anticipating pleasure releases dopamine. It's a wonderful thing, and there's so many important experiences. Dopamine is what involved in motivation, and just pleasure. Like we all want to need and deserve and should be able to experience pleasure. Great. Adolescence, there are a lot of things that are very unique about adolescence that are different than for children or for adults. And dopamine is one of the key distinctions, one of a few. So like you alluded to, adolescents release more dopamine in response to experience than children or adults in studies. Their baseline is also lower. So when you think about, dopamine, when we experience dopamine, that's what's like, there's that enthusiasm or that excitement. And when we don't have dopamine, it looks like, it's why teenagers often look bored so easily, right? They're like, they're not feeling it. They're not engaged, right? And we're like, but this is so interesting. This person's talking about, or this documentary or this, we're going through a hike in nature and look around. It's beautiful. It's right. And for us, it really is. But for them, it's like, okay, can we do something? Like, I want to I talk about, we talk in our family, kind of a little debate about downhill skiing versus cross country skiing. I'm like, yes, cross country skiing, it's like beautiful. It's so nice. It's like a hike in nature, but you're gliding. And they're like, but I want to go down hills. Like, I want some action. It's fun. Right. So this is a lot of what we're seeing. And it is that transition once they hit adolescence is all of a sudden they're experiencing floods of dopamine in ways that don't often make sense. And it can also, there's a positive side too, because that's why they're so excited about things, right? Which can also be really fun to be around teenagers, right? Like that concert or that, new boba tea place that opened up or whatever the thing is. And it's like, so for adolescents, things that are good for us are great for them. They just experience joy and pleasure more intensely.
That's cool.
And so it can be an exciting thing, but it can also be, there are some things we got to pay attention to because it can be a recipe for unsafe habits and patterns as well.
Yeah.
I can so remember like a moment when I was probably, just getting into my teen years. I was probably like 13 or something. And our normal, like, grew up on the East Coast and like we'd have a trip to the beach in the summertime, which is what I looked forward to like the most. And we would typically go to this one beach and they had all the entertainment. It had the boardwalk, the arcade, all the rides, all the action, tons of people, all this stuff. And I just loved it. It was amazing. And then we decided that the families that we were going with were like, no, this time we're going to go to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but like off the beaten path. Like it'll be like up away, no roads. There's horses on the beach. There's nothing around. It's going to be so great, Terry. I literally cried. I was like,
Oh.
this sounds awful. Why in the world would we go away from the water slides and all this
The
stuff?
arcade back before
Yeah.
video games were on your
So
iPad.
when you described the downhill skiing versus cross country skiing, I just remember being devastated. It was like it felt like it was like a punishment or something until we got there, and then we realized that there was a few like dopamine hitting things to do that
Yeah.
involved like a oversized slingshot, and I don't even know what else we found, but there was but yeah, I mean, gosh, I still remember
Yeah.
exactly what that felt like.
That's so funny. Well, I have a question about these dopamine hits of pleasure. So as a parenting coach, we teach a lot around helping parents understand their kids' core needs, the need to feel powerful, the need to belong, the need to feel valuable and loved and all these things. And so my question for you is so we have misbehavior is often like when they're getting that need met in an unhealthy way. So we work with a lot of parents of power kids or strong-willed children, and these kids are constantly looking to feel powerful, right? Like those of us in the apple, a lot of times the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So the parent is often very similar, but my question is there a dopamine hit happening when we feel powerful? And does that question make sense? And I just wonder that when I look at like teens misbehavior, and we're going to get next to like the immature PFC that makes them more impulsive, but is that considered a dopamine hit when a kid gets that need to feel powerful met? Like, so for example, a healthy way of our almost 17-year-old right now, she's a high level beach volleyball player going for like a D1 beach volleyball scholarship. And last weekend, she took second in a tournament, a college, recruiting tournament. And it was insane. The level, like you could just tell everyone was on fire. She was on fire. But we always look at that as our strong-willed kid getting that need to feel powerful met, like boom. And then there's unhealthy ways where they're like arguing or, especially if parents or children aren't in this work, like a lot of kids, they're just arguing and they're getting that need to feel powerful met in unhealthy ways, right? They're showing disrespect, they're hurting back, they're saying you're the worst, screw you, like whatever. But like that hit, is that considered a hit, a dopamine, or no?
I think it could be. I think it could
Okay.
be. I think dopamine is a neutral experience. It doesn't have to
Mm,
be good. Having power over or that rush or that, sometimes that need for control can turn into something we need. What we really want, I mean, any like it's people who bully. There's like this temporary
right.
surge of like, I have control, I'm in charge, right? Over.
Yep.
And then it comes crashing down, of course. So
Yep.
almost anything, like so many things can release dopamine for us. And again, it
Okay.
can become good habits or bad habits. Um, you know, um, and so I think it's really important to kind of, like you said, like, notice what that is. And then what happens if, and then to be curious about what's behind that. What would happen in the absence of that? Right. Well, there's often a fear because our dopamine receptors can get worn out if they're used in the same way. Like anything that elicits dopamine can become almost like addictive in a way. right? Because that's
Yeah.
what addiction ultimately is, just in a very general way. It's like this release of dopamine and this dependence on dopamine in a certain way. And then it just becomes a pattern and rigid and repetitive over and over and over again. And then that dopamine receptor gets worn down, and then it becomes difficult to experience dopamine in other contexts and other capacities. So
That makes sense. So yeah, so so we're constantly, I think I'm hearing this as we're constantly trying to teach our children and ourselves and our nervous systems and our bodies how to get those dopamine spikes and healthy dopamine in a healthy way, right? Versus the unhealthy way, because we want to have those healthy addictions, right? Like the exercise and the nature and like, all the
Achieving
human
a goal.
achieving
Yeah.
a goal, like, when you grow up, like healthy sexual interaction, like these are all like great healthy ways. And then the unhealthy ways also can become addictive, but we want to stay away from those addictions, obviously, because that's not a true dopamine hit. I've always tried to explain this to my little guy around because I think boys are more like the video games, right? Like they always want my little guy's always like, please, please, please. He's never been allowed to have the violent video games, but he's like, please, please, please. And I've tried to explain to him, not really having your expertise at all, but just trying to help him understand, like, I want you to learn how to have healthy dopamine instead of the false dopamines. And he's always asked me, Mom, why is this false dopamine? It's really fun to hit a level. And it's like, what is
yeah,
wrong with that? And I'm like, I don't know, but I just know that I want you to get it in
yeah,
nature when you're
yeah,
surfing and snowboarding and cracking
exactly.
up with your friends. And like, it's a lot to
Yeah,
explain to kids,
right, right. And I would actually frame it differently, not like
Okay.
good dopamine or false dopamine or judging it, but
Yes, help
more
me.
about thinking in terms of dopamine drips versus floods.
Oh, okay.
And so
Great.
what, like, as adults, what we aim for is to like experience joy, right? Like that
Mhm.
hike felt, that was really nice. That I enjoyed that, right? Or cuddling with my partner or something, or enjoying some ice cream even, or or something like this meal. It's not an intense flood, right? But it's like joy, right? The drips
Mm,
that happen over time. And so, yes, our kids, they're wired for more floods and more intensity, but which is why. So, the other thing, piece we got to talk about is our culture. We
yeah.
live in I've heard this referred to by Ann Lemke, who's a psychiatrist in Stanford, as she wrote a book called Dopamine Nation, which is a fantastic book if you really want to get into this.
Okay.
And she talks about the culture as well and calls it a dopamine economy. If you really think about the world we're in right now, yes, social media, obviously, but even for us adults, Amazon, dopamine, right? I can buy this, I'll get it tomorrow, right? Easy. A book, if there's we're talking about books here. People can have the book literally right now. Like just click on it and it's a Kindle, it'll show up,
In two
right?
hours.
In 2 hours, right? We can get things instantly. And our kids are growing up. We know a world where that wasn't the case, where we had to be bored, we had to wait in line, we had to get a ride to go to the video store to rent a video movie to bring it home, and right, versus now I can just stream it and get it right away. So we have to be extra mindful of making sure our kids have opportunities to practice being bored, waiting, pausing, thinking things through. That's what, it's not that technology is bad inherently, but it's like it's drawn, the designers are designing to help you feel good right now. And it does a great job of it. She taught, I wrote this down because it's such a great quote she wrote in the book. The smartphone is the modern day hypodermic needle delivering digital dopamine 24/7 for a wired generation. And so it is part of our job, like to understand they are more susceptible than we are because of the intensity. That's why, and that's what's nefarious about a lot of these companies. They know that too, and yet they're like drilling this home, and so these kids are just more vulnerable to it. So we do need to kind of like, yeah, like you gave like yeah, you can be bored. We're gonna go on a hike, and I don't want you to bring your phone. And yeah, they might mope. They might say this is really boring. And I try to not be annoying, but about this. But when my kids say they're bored, I'll sometimes just be like, "Great, that's
Yeah.
great news. I love that you're bored. Boredom is really important. It's the seed of creativity and problem solving and critical thinking."
Yes.
And so I don't overdo that because I don't want to be annoying, but it is. That's a win for me as a parent if you can hang out and be bored a little bit.
Oh, it's so good. It is like the good fight that everyone's in right now. We're in it with ourselves, we're in it with our kids, and it's so important. Your work is so important. All right, the second point of the teen brain cocktail that we've talked, you've talked about somewhat, but just to hit it home, an immature TFC that makes them more impulsive, combined with floods of dopamine in anticipation of experiences that might be fun, is a cocktail that sets up adolescents to screw up. I don't know if that was your words or mine.
Maybe
We
bonehead
talk like that
decision,
around
screw
here.
up, sure, whatever we want to call it. Yes, they will
So
do it. We
yeah,
did
talk
it.
to us
They
about
will.
that. Like there is this meaning like we just need to normalize that teens are going to make mistakes, right?
Absolutely. And understand when we understand this, then it's easier to not take it personally. Like
Yeah.
that's what I think this cocktail, it's just a recipe that's just asking for mistakes. And that's but there's a reason evolutionary that we have this system. So the prefrontal, the PFC is the prefrontal cortex. It's that part
Mhm.
right behind the forehead. It's the last part of our brain to mature. So by
Wow.
adolescence, the brain is basically complete except for this last 20% that is under going through a massive renovation. It's under construction until the mid 20s. This last part, it's the
Interesting.
last part because it's the critical part for functioning as an adult. It's called executive functioning, planning, judgment, but it's also how we filter emotions. Our emotional experiences go through our prefrontal cortex before they go to our limbic amygdala emotional brain. So, like, we have a mature prefrontal cortex. So, if we experience a stressful situation in our lives, we have that filter that says, let me think through this. What was that about? How that person was kind of rude. That wasn't cool. Like, huh, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do, or I'm not going to do, or like, I want to send this
Yeah.
email or say, tell this person off, but like, that's not going to be helpful to the situation. It's probably going to make it worse. Or, I have this temptation, but, I want to stay up late and do this, but then I'm going to be really tired tomorrow. So I'm going to like not do that. That's all prefrontal cortex stuff, right? That keeps us in line. And we even still can slip up and make mistakes and even with mature brains. So
Yeah.
this is why this part is so important because they are going through a massive construction project with this part of their brain. So it's unreliable. I say it's predictably unpredictable, And so what that means is when their prefrontal cortex is online, they're thoughtful, they're intelligent, they're empathetic and compassionate, they have great ideas, they can plan, their judgment is great. And we see that in our kids and we're like, this is fantastic. It's amazing. And then hours later or minutes later, boom, what just happened? They're just like a puddle of emotion and impulsivity, and or they did that bonehead decision. Like
Right.
what were you thinking moment? Like and we'll tell ourselves or tell them you're so much smarter than this, but it's not about being smart. It's not about
Mhm.
being smart. It's about their brain being still developing. And in some of those moments, this is that cocktail part, if you combine, they have this impulsivity because their judgment and planning, it's just inconsistent. It's going to be not always be there, especially the younger adolescents with a surge of dopamine. That's a recipe for risk taking. So it's not that they don't know, but it's like somebody said, let's say, a teenager has a friend that's texting them at 11 saying, hey, we're hanging out at the park, you should come join us. And then they're like, they know like that sounds actually really fun. I'm bored, I'm just by myself, I can't sleep, but I know I'll get into trouble, my parents would be so mad. It's probably like not a good idea, but it sounds really fun. And then you have that impulsivity that says I'm going to just go do it and I'll worry about it later, and they just go do it. And then we take it personally, like, why would you disrespect me because we have this rule and we're trying to build trust. But it wasn't about the parent. Usually they're not. And so it's just this
Yeah.
combination of being impulsive and then that intense dopamine that just says, I just want to do it and I'll think about it later.
Okay, let's talk real parenting for a moment. If your home sometimes feels more like a war zone than a peaceful sanctuary, and your strong willed child feels like they're constantly pushing back, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not a bad parent. You're not broken, and your child is not out to ruin your life. I know. It sure seems like that sometimes, doesn't it? You're exhausted because you're actually trying so hard, but you're using hand-me-down parenting tools that weren't effective back then to get long-term results and aren't effective now. Plus, the fear and force tactics that most of us inherited were never going to work for the beautiful, bold, determined child you've been gifted. That's why I created Thriving with Strong-Willed Kids, a completely free quick start learning bundle that's changing the game for families everywhere. Inside this bundle, I'm going to teach you how to calm power struggles without punishment or threats or yelling. I'm going to help you communicate in ways your child actually responds to, no matter how strong-willed they are, and finally feel empowered and responsive as a parent instead of reactive. Inside the free learning guide and interactive 1-hour workshop, I'll help you flip the script to stop seeing your child as too much and start seeing them as exactly who they're meant to be. Remember, you're not failing. You just haven't been given the right roadmap yet. So you can grab your free bundle and choose your workshop time at freshstartfamilyonline.com/power. Let's rewrite your parenting story together.
It is,
helpful. That is very helpful. I think the whole not taking it personally is, I don't know, an eye-opener for me too. Because it's like you try to go through all these situations like as if we're like, thinking the same way and feeling the same way. We're just kind of bringing them along with us. But like, it literally looks totally different to them with that, like you said, that part of their brain just under construction. And I mean, especially too, if you already have like a kid that maybe already like defaults to a certain tone anyways, that's like, we know is already there, but you're like, it's hard not to take it personally when some of these things happen. You're just like, oh no, they're just flat out being disrespectful, or like, ouch, did we raise a mean kid or a kid that doesn't have feelings? And it's like, no, I think she already defaults to a certain tone. And then, oh, I already said who it was.
That's okay.
We've really given us a run for our money lately. So
No, I know.
Stop, but he just comes around quicker.
But that helps me a lot because I know sometimes there is like an ouch moment. I know you get stung.
Yeah.
We both get stung. We both have different, like, I think levels of like resilience to certain things. And it all just depends on what we're going through in that day. Like sometimes you're just like, ooh, that's the last thing I needed was like like a sting there. When they're just completely like oblivious to it. They're not trying to do it at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can understand that, I mean, my daughter is fantastic. My kids are amazing, superstars. They're very different. And my daughter has bigger emotions and bigger feelings. Her son is a little bit more naturally even keeled. They were like that since they were babies and at different stages. Like our kids are different. And it isn't about who they are, their character. It's like understanding. And when we know the brain stuff, it's so much easier to not take it personal because it's like they can't help it. That's why we talk about, like, we can't overstate the importance of like how important this prefrontal cortex is. And then some kids just have more sensitivity. And so they need more time, and it does come together. And so, they're like that word hijack. They have an amygdala hijack. It takes over in the moment. It's not a reflection of their values or our values or what we taught them or didn't teach them. They literally can't help it. In some ways, they kind of need to go through that and work through it. And if we respond in a calm way and in a thoughtful way, it's actually an opportunity to help them get better. Because that's the purpose of our job, I think, in this stage is to, yes, time and development for sure. Their prefrontal cortex just over time is going to get more mature and all that for sure, even if we do nothing. But what we want to do is think about how do we help facilitate that even faster? How do we help improve that process? When we ground, punish, take away, yell, meet them on that level, they don't get to practice improving that because they'll just shut down or get more overwhelmed, right? So we just always want to think about when they get like that, how do I help foster so they can get better at the problem solving, at the pausing, at the thinking things through? That's the work of parenting adolescents, I think.
Absolutely. And we have some of those points we're going to go over of things we can help. But when it comes to not taking things personally and just understanding what's happening with their brain, it's so helpful. Just this week, I was reflecting on as I'm teaching these nervous system healing and regulation workshops. And I think this is such a fascinating conversation. And it's like we could talk to you for hours because then comes in also our nervous system response and conditioning, right? And like, what are we like the reason I think we knee jerk what we make it mean about us is because it's a lot of that, how the nervous system was conditioned when we were young, right? So this week we had a little flare up where it was like Stella had done something where I clearly felt hurt. Like I felt like I was the parent that was like, I get the short end of the stick and Stella loves daddy and she's like doesn't like me as much and she's mean to me. And it was just like, and then I remember I did some work in the evening and was just kind of in my own little huffy zone. And in the morning, still feeling a little huffy and just meh. And I remember she came down and she just looked at me and she was like, "Hey, Mama, good morning." And I was like, "Oh, you're not carrying on with this. Like when you went to bed without saying goodnight to me, you probably weren't thinking all these things that I thought about that you were thinking about me, right?" But the reason why I tell this story is because I grew up in a home where when I became a teenager, my dad thought that I didn't like him. He's like, my mom has said to me as we got older, your dad just, we'll have like a blow up in the kitchen. I'm 47 now and he'll get so mad at me because I use like the wrong omelet pan. And, it's just like, yeah, I can't, like, what is his deal, Mom? He freaks out for no reason. And one time she was like, well, he just thinks you don't like him. And, all the way since you were a teenager. And it's like, I realized was my conditioning, right? Like it was these years of the tone was, when there was an argument or, a disagreement or something, it wasn't just, you're a teenager, I'm going to teach you and support you and help you understand why this limit is so firm. It was like, it became this very personal thing. And that was the way I was like, I think my nervous system adopted that and conditioned that. And now here we are with a teenager. And it's like my knee jerk is to go to, you don't like me. And so it was such a cool time. And I don't know if that resonates with you and what you kind of, how you kind of see it, but it was very reflective this week where I was like, this is not the truth of what's happening. She's our cactus kid. She's, she's a tough cookie. Like she's a power kid and she already is changing the world, right? Like she's going to do amazing things, but she's not against me and she doesn't not like me. She's just a little cactusy sometimes. I remember I saw a quote from Pink, the artist once, who's a sassafras, right? We all like she is not underspoken and her shows, like even her personality comes out in her shows. I think she like hangs upside down. I've heard her concerts are amazing. But I saw a quote once from her that she said, when I was young, my mom always thought that like everything I did was out to get her or something. And she was like, it was just me being me. And you see what Pink grew up to be. And you imagine like these relationships where it's just not always truth. It's just that sometimes, always the nervous system support with a specialist, a helper of the world to help you just decondition kind of that knee-jerk belief system that you're in danger, which comes with that thought of someone doesn't like me, someone's judging me, life's not fair, I'm going to get hurt, whatever it is. That was really helpful for me this week just to step back and realize, okay, it is safe to see this in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Parenting is so humbling in that way. I mean, I really think it's just, I mean, as us, we're like, this is what we do and we think about it and learn and talk, and I mean, I wrote a book. And yet I have these insecure moments with my own teenager, or times when she's annoyed with me or irritated, or I mean, and my wife's a therapist as well, a family therapist, and, is
amazing,
experienced, brilliant one. And we've had moments where our teenagers, our daughter said, "I hate you guys." Whoa, that's tough to hear. Like, seriously, we're doing all the things, aren't we? And like, but it's what you said. Then like, hours later, she's coming in, cuddling, we're watching a show together. It's that impulsivity and the intense feelings. And like you just talk about how your daughter, my daughter too, she's a feeler, and she just has big feelings. And so like our job is to help harness that, right? I certainly have some boundaries, but also like leverage that. And so she's found theater and choir and like the arts, and she's become such a good friend. And she's like some of that maturity. She's doing so well now, but she's had some hard times. And it's like how we respond. And it is so key to remember that. It is, I mean, if we're struggling with it, most parents are going to struggle with it. Like, that's just accept it. It's going to sting sometimes. No matter what we say, you're going to probably have moments where you're going to take it personally. Like, that's just going to happen. But then if we can step back, I think once that does happen and just note, oh, I am taking this personally. Okay, this isn't about me in this moment. And maybe there is something for me to work on and something I could have done better, but we'll have a conversation. It doesn't mean she doesn't love me or he doesn't love me. It's not because I'm not a bad parent. That was just a really hard moment, a hard interaction. And so let's try to work on it together and learn from it and not make it about me being bad or my child being bad or entitled or spoiled, or I don't need to label them either, and I don't need to label myself. I can think more about, this is just hard. They're having a hard time. Maybe I'm having a hard time too in different ways.
Yep. And when you're doing that, you are literally often breaking that chain, that like painful generational cycle, right? Where like that was the way it was always done in your family legacy. And now you're like, oh, it's just a day. It's just a mistake. It's just a conflict. You wake up and you're like, oh, we can do this differently the next day. So I love that. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a rapid fire here with our 5 things you can do to help. And we'll kind of just sit back and listen. But we're going to go through the 5 ways that you recommend that we can help our kids when they're teens, when they're in these adolescent years. And just if you could just comment on each little one, and we'll try to get all 5 done in the time we have left. Number 1, Yshai. 5 things you can do to help your adolescent teen who we now understand how their brain works and that they have lots of dopamine and impulsivity and that it makes sense. But number 1, talk to us just for a minute about how we can praise our teens' effort, determination, kindness, and problem solving.
Be specific. Don't just say good job. Like, what did they do that you appreciated? And be genuine and authentic. If it feels like a technique or that you're trying to get them to do something for you, they'll see right through it. So they don't need to hear even just "I love you." It's good to say "I love you," or "good job, thanks," but like really be genuine. And then, what are you appreciating? I noticed you got up early on your own without being reminded, or you cleared your plate, I didn't even ask you, or you were really helpful, or that was really kind the way you like did that for grandma or grandpa or something like that. I just appreciate it. I know you didn't want to come on that hike, but you did anyways. And I know that wasn't like the most your choice of a thing you wanted to do during the day, but you did, and you had a good attitude. So thank you.
Oh, I love that. We can do more of that. We do a pretty good job, but we can do more of that.
No, I think we can be more intentional about doing that more.
I love it. Okay. Number 2, limit technology, but don't take it away.
So because these are dopamine machines and our kids are uniquely vulnerable to dopamine, to being susceptible, we do need to have boundaries, but we have to empathize that this is their life and their future and the world they live in. This is a large way of how they connect with peers and in the world. And we need to honor and respect and appreciate that this is really important, especially older teenagers. I think older teenagers, high school versus middle school, sometimes there's a difference there. So if we just talk about high school kids, like they need their phones to connect with friends, but they also need boundaries. And we have to know what our kids' limits are and abilities are based on their behavior. So we want to focus on learning skills, we take the phone away completely, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And there's going to be some real consequences and costs to them and their development. Looking for ways to help them learn how to manage the overwhelming nature of apps and social media and phones. We want to teach them skills, build their prefrontal cortex ability to set their own limits eventually, to be able to use their phone in a healthy way. So don't take it away. In general, I would say that. And instead focus on setting boundaries, on setting limits, on setting up certain rules, whether it's bedtime or whether it's removing certain apps or focusing on certain times or certain places that are phone free, things like that. Focus on that, collaborating, working together with them. And that's going to give them the best chance of having a healthy relationship with their device.
Oh, and be in it with them, right? I know that like we are all, if we're being honest, battling the same things. Like, are we going to take it into our room? Are we going to turn it on while we're eating lunch? Are we going to pull it out during a family meal? Like we've got to be practicing with them, right? Right?
Such a huge, huge piece. They see what we're doing. And if we're like, can you please put your phone away? And then 5 minutes later, they see us just scrolling in the waiting room.
Right.
We're not going to have credibility. And
Ever.
so we get a lot more leverage. We technically could say, hey, I'm an adult. I don't have to put my phone
Yeah.
away in the hallway at night. I can do whatever I want. And that's true. But we're going to have a lot more credibility, a lot more clout if we're willing to do it with them. And it's probably going to help us too. Because the
We
data
just were
on
laughing because
having
I
our
just said to T this morning, I'm like, Taryn and his cups, you know, like he leaves these cups in the windowsill at his little, we call it his lair in the couch. And, you know, I'm like, it's one of those moments that I just want to be like, I'm the boss. I get to leave my cups, but you don't.
Yeah, she's like, I could leave my stuff around the house, but it's because I'm the boss.
I knew I wasn't serious. I said I
I know,
want to say that.
it's funny, but
great.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That was my desire to just be able to say that. And of course, I know that that's not the way it works. As I look down and there's my shoes and there's my stuff, you know.
But yeah,
So
definitely same page with the technology. I mean, we've just for us, you know, we've found phone-free bedrooms for our kids, and the dinner table has been really good. And then, of course, some time too, you know, different times a day are kind of been more understood that they're without, or hey, go for it. This is your time, you know. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think working together and having those conversations that hopefully they can start. And there is no, I think it is important to say, I'm sure you guys say this all the time, there's no one size fits all approach. We're all trying to figure this out. So no shame if your kid has their phone all night in their room. If you aren't setting limits, you're not a bad parent. This is hard. It's difficult. It's tricky and nuanced. We just have to keep kind of thinking about it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
just
it's
share it because that's worked for us. Like you
Totally.
said, I mean, everybody's dynamic. I mean, their household dynamics are totally different. The room situations are different. Yeah.
I do think this one is very important though when it literally comes to the lives of our children. So I am like such an advocate for very, very, very firm rules on that one because
On the
it's like,
phones out of the
as you
room at night.
said, no
Yeah.
shame at all. But I just, it's like, you can do this, right? Like you can do this.
And
I
all the
promise
research
you.
that supports that in terms of improving sleep, quality
Right.
of sleep, quantity of sleep, the
Yeah.
benefit for everyone, but especially for teenagers because they need more sleep. And I always encourage parents to like use that research, leverage that. So this isn't about just being a rigid parent
Yeah.
controlling, or it's like there's a lot of science behind this that the number, like I think one of the number one things that contributes to adolescent mental health issues is a lack of sleep, poor sleep. So
Yes.
this is one thing. I agree. Of all the things, there's a lot of different ways to have rules and this, but I think like really prioritizing sleep at night is the number one thing. And I think that's the best way to do that is having phones out of the room is the best way to support a healthy
You're
sleep.
right. And they respect the data. Like they respect the data more sometimes than just because we said so, right? So like that is such a great reminder to just help them present it with the data, not to be a nerdy, annoying parent, but just I just want you to understand why we're so firm on it, right? But I know that I do with this almost 17-year-old, 99% of her friends are falling asleep to TikTok. Sometimes they're 2 or 3 a.m. They're exhausted, they're fighting with their parents, they're getting like they're just all the traditional stuff. And it's like it's tough. So, and I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot, as you said, no shame. And it's just such an important area to get support on if you need it, right? Okay.
And we
I
found
think
some middle ground. Oh, go ahead, Yshai.
well, I'm just gonna say I think the way we get kids to comply is data helps, but also just values. Like this is our
Yeah.
value as a family is we prioritize sleep or we having dinner together or
And mental
connecting
health.
or
Yeah.
spending time together or mental or physical activity. It's just what we do as a family. And so we have to model that too. Like this is important to us. So like they'll respond more if it's grounded in values and not just like, well, I think video games are horrible. Like
Yeah.
that's like, it's not really, it's just more about like, I don't like it. And so I don't want you to do it because, and they don't do well with that. But if it's like our value is family time, our value is spending time outside, our value is, you know, so maybe like watching a movie together is different than you watching by yourself in your room because this is right. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what's the
Yeah.
difference? Well, there is a difference because we're like connecting versus not.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in general, I mean, and our kids are no exception there. It's like, yeah, talking about what you're for versus like just being all about what you're against is more connecting in general.
Point. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
It's
awesome.
and for you
yeah.
getting a good night's sleep, because that's the
Yeah.
number one. And kids really are interested in mental health. They do, young people, which I think is a great part of this culture and this generation. They talk about it. And so you frame it as that I care about your mental health. And this is one of the number one ways to support your mental health is you getting a good night's sleep. And the best way to support that is not having your phone in your room. All the research, all the experts are saying that. And then
Yeah.
I'm willing to do it too. And I, like we said before, I think that can also help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, it's like I know the kids in our area, the anxiety, depression, and even suicide in just our town is off the charts. Like Stella had 2 suicides within a month, I think 3 within 6 months at her school last year, her high school. Like it's just like that part of it is just I think there's so much conversation there and the mental health. We always felt so good about over and over again with Stella and because she did wait till high school to have a phone when 99% of the families didn't. But there was always the yes behind the no, right? And it always was like just a little bit stronger of mental health. Your chances of fighting those things are just going to be a little bit stronger if you can just wait. You got to trust us. But here's the yes behind the no, right? And still to this day, now it's turned into sleep, a lot of sleep stuff, but it's still what is that yes behind the no? And just to be really, really strong. Next point, Yshai, get your teen out of the house and engaged in pro-social activities. Your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
So we think of pro-social activities sometimes as it's getting them out of the house or it's learning skills and things like that. And I think yes, those are useful things, but what pro-social activities do so much that we don't even often realize that are so important. One is it does take a village. It's such a cliche, but we cannot do it all ourselves. I don't care how good of a parent you think you are, how smart you are, or how many
Yeah.
books I've written, any of us have written. Like we can't. We need community. Our kids need to listen to other adults. So learning from other coaches or mentors, instructors, other people, even tutor, like anybody, like is really important for them. It's important for them to get to learn other perspectives, other points of view. This is kind of part of being in society is you need to be able to listen and learn from other people. So there's that. And then there's building confidence and competence. I don't know about you guys, but I think this is very common. Certainly my kids will often listen to their aunts or uncles or teachers in a way they don't. I'm like,
Yeah.
I said all the time. And now all of a sudden it's a great idea because your aunt said that, whatever,
Right.
but that's so real as a therapist. Like one of the things I talk about this with parents all the time, like I'm going to say things that you've probably said to your kids, but like they will listen to me in a different way. And
Yes.
so there's that value. And then there's the benefit of we build confidence and self-esteem not by being told we're great, but by earning it through experience, accomplishing something, working hard, and then getting results and be like, I did that. That was really cool. And we talk about praise,
Yeah.
it's sincere praise. Like people in the community generally, they're not going to just praise you for nothing. They're going to say, whoa, you did that really well. That was really improved. Or I need you to work on this. Or I need you to do better. And then you do it and like, look what you just did. And so they build self-esteem by having pro-social activities. And then there's the social skills and developing friendship skills. Some kids need more of that than others, but making friends, learning how to interact, learning how to relate, how to hold conversations that a lot of this generation struggles with because they are spending more time. The studies show this, that they're not going out as often as we did when we were their
Yes.
age. You
Yeah.
know, there's some upsides. Teen pregnancy is down. They're not drinking as much.
Yeah.
Things like that. But they're also not socializing as much in person and working on conflict resolution, working on awkwardness. That's part of just
Yes.
socialization and social skills. They're not learning that as quickly, and so that's another benefit. So lots of really important reasons for them to be out having pro-social activity. It's not about being the best or, winning. It's about life skills that you can only learn so much of at home with your
Yeah.
core family.
It's so true. The whole like their social stuff is down. And like I can see why the like teen sex or the teen pregnancy is down because as Stella, especially like the years where I guess it was like eighth, ninth grade, she would have these buddies over and we were like watching and we were like, they all just hang out and they all just want to be on their phones. So there's no more like, should we like try to close the door and play spin the bottle? You know, like that was the thing. Like I was like, I asked Darren last week, I'm like, at these parties, I'm like, do you guys ever play like spin the bottle? And he's like, what are you talking about, Mom? No. And I'm like, I think it's because they all are just, they're getting the kind of, I know you said not right or wrong, right? Not good or bad dopamine, but they're getting the hits from like all these kids have like unlimited access to these phones and they're getting the TikTok hits, but they're
Yeah.
not getting like the natural hit from like kissing someone or something. So it's interesting because it's a good thing that teen pregnancy is down, but it's also really interesting to me because the ability to socialize and all the things you said, the awkward stuff, like to be able to work through that and like how it's just so fascinating to me what's happening. And we saw it every time she would have those people, like the friends over, those years where she was, maybe it was during COVID or something, I don't know, but we saw it with our own two eyes that humanity is changing because of the screens, which was really fascinating.
Yeah. COVID set a lot of that back as
Yeah.
well.
Oh,
Yeah.
so interesting. Oh my gosh. Okay. Number 4 was provide boundaries and expectations. I feel like we've covered that really well. So since we're at time, finish us off, Yshai, with keep consequences short and reasonable. And gosh, I love finishing with this one because we teach compassionate discipline here at Fresh Start Family versus punishment. And I think it has just it has transformed our whole life as a parent. I think it's the reason why we're able to have such strong relationships with our kids and safety and mutual respect and trust and actual effectiveness with the kids changing their behavior after they make a mistake. But tell us your final thoughts on why consequences, keeping them short and reasonable, is so important.
Yeah, because particularly kids who struggle, they can get buried in being in trouble. This gets taken away that. And then I see this all the time. And then a kid's just in this hole and they're like, we talk about the different states, they're shut down. They're
Yeah.
aloof. They don't care. And that's a really, really sad thing to see, but it's a difficult thing to get out of as a parent as well. And so really thinking again and again, what am I doing here? I'm here to help them learn. They need some skills. And to do that, kids need to have something to reach for. And so they need to have fresh starts. So yes, natural consequences, but it needs to be something they can do. So then maybe it's like, okay, you didn't get your chore done. So then you have an extra chore tomorrow. Once you get that done, then you can have play video games. And that could
Yeah.
take a minute, that could take 10 minutes, it take an hour, it might take a day, but you
It's
have a
related.
chance to do it again. You didn't turn in your phone. Okay, so you got to turn it in a half an hour earlier the next day. That's it. And
Right.
we start over and we try again. We talk about it. Like, so opportunities to try again and try again, learn from their mistake. The window of learning is really a day or two. A week, they're not learning anything by day 3, 4, 5, 6. They're just waiting to get their privileges back. And a lot of us talk about our own parent, how we were parented and our wiring is kind of grounded sometimes in punitive, like I'm supposed to
Oh,
punish, I'm
yeah.
supposed to teach them, right? Like a lesson, and they need to be something punished, but they actually don't. They need to learn. And yes, part of that is natural consequences. If I speed, I might get a ticket. That
Yeah.
sucks, but that's a natural consequence, right? And then I get to try again and drive safer. So we need to give them chances for fresh start.
I love it.
There's
The
a good
fresh
way. Let me
start.
You
see
should
Yeah.
have a
hype
little
that.
graphic that goes off like a little bell that goes off anytime somebody says fresh start. This is
We
good. Yeah.
should. That would be so fun. Yes, teaching related, reasonable, respectful consequences. I love it so much. That's exactly what we teach here at Fresh Start Family. So, what a beautiful conversation, Yshai. You are just such a wealth of information. You've been so much fun to talk to today. Leave listeners and viewers with where they can find you and get your book and all the things. We'll make sure, of course, we put all these links in the show notes, but where can everyone come find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah. So my book, Staying Connected with Your Teen, and I actually have a chapter on expectations and a chapter on accountability because connection is the foundation, but we also need correction. How to do that effectively, like you guys we're talking about so much. I have a lot in there. Anywhere books are sold on Amazon or anywhere else. And then my website is my name, YshaiBoussi.com. And I've got some videos and articles and things like that. Instagram, I'm at your teen therapist on Instagram. So those are the ways.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
time today. We've had so much fun chatting with you, and I'm feeling super inspired to head back into the rest of the day as the teens get home
This is
later
great.
this afternoon. So thank you,
This
Yshai.
was a fun conversation, you guys. Thank you.
Hooray! You made it to the end of a Fresh Start Family Show episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a quick second, make sure you hit subscribe to our show so you can be updated when our new episodes drop. I will see you back soon for the next episode. If you are tired of the yelling, the guilt, and the feeling like you're failing as a parent, especially with your strong-willed child, please hear me. There's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong with your kiddo. Strong-willed kids aren't broken or problem kids who need their wills broken. They're brave, they're spirited, they're here to teach us something powerful. I know myself because I've been raising one for 17 years and she has completely, positively transformed my life. Thanks to this work that has empowered me to see her in an accurate, truthful lens. I'd love to show you how to thrive with your strong-willed kid too, starting now. You can grab my free Quick Start Learning Bundle and choose a time for the interactive workshop at freshstartfamilyonline.com/power. You are not alone and you don't have to figure this out on your own anymore. I'll see you inside your free learning guide and at class very soon.